Sergio Perez has just given us the biggest hint about his future in Red Bull, even though previously there were talks about whether or not his future as an F1 driver in Red Bull is under scrutiny due to his performances. Many times over and over, Cristian Horner and Helmut Marko went publicly to defend him. But now with his recent statements, it seems that it really is over for him. In an unexpected turn of events, Sergio Perez has raised questions about his future with Red Bull beyond 2024. He expressed his desire to be a part of a team where he feels he can make a meaningful contribution. At the start of the season, Perez was seen as a contender for the championship, trailing Max Verstappen by just 6 points after winning in Azerbaijan. However, his recent performances have been closely scrutinized and his future with the team is now uncertain. Speculation about Sergio Perez's future continues due to a divide within the Red Bull team. Helmut Marko has hinted at the possibility of a driver change as soon as next season, while Red Bull boss Cristian Horner insists that Perez will remain with the team. In a recent interview, Marko emphasized that in Formula 1, nothing is ever 100% certain. He mentioned that while Perez currently has a contract, it's not a guarantee of a job, but rather a contractual agreement, leaving room for potential changes like Perez moving to AlphaTauri or even not racing at all. On the other hand, Cristian Horner has been more definitive, stating that Perez will indeed be a Red Bull driver in the upcoming season. However, it appears that Perez is taking matters into his own hands for next year. He mentioned that given the season's developments, he wants to be in an environment where he can make a meaningful contribution in the upcoming races. If Red Bull isn't that place in 2024, he will explore other options. Currently, Sergio Perez is fully dedicated to Red Bull's goals. He aims to assist the team in securing the Constructors' Championship and achieving second place in the drivers' standings. He emphasized that, for the time being, his primary objective is to remain with Red Bull, win more races, and continue winning championships with the team. Perez has a contract for next year, so he plans to assess his options at some point during the upcoming season. While Sergio Perez is considering his options for the F1 2025 season, he's facing limited choices for the remaining F1 2024 season if Red Bull decides to end their deal early. There are only 3 available seats for the next season: Alfa Romeo Sauber, Williams and AlphaTauri. It's highly unlikely that Perez would agree to move to AlphaTauri, which is Red Bull's junior team. Williams appears committed to retaining Logan Sargent. However, a return to Sauber to replace Zhou Guanyu could be a nostalgic move for Perez. He made his Formula 1 debut with the Hinwil team back in 2011. Another reunion that could bring both success and excitement to the Formula 1 community is a return to Aston Martin for Sergio Perez. Perez had his most successful years in Formula 1 while racing for Force India Racing Point. However, he was dropped from the team after the 2020 season to make way for the team's owner's son, Lance Stroll. It would be quite fitting if Perez were to replace Stroll at Aston Martin, especially considering Stroll hasn't achieved the results that Aston Martin might have with Perez in the driver's seat. However, the most likely scenario is that Perez will remain with Red Bull for at least one more season, but who's the main candidate? Well, of course, none other than Lando Norris, who's a close friend of Max Verstappen. Lando Norris is considered a potential candidate to fill a potential vacant seat at Red Bull, with Helmut Marko, an advisor to the team, mentioning him as a future option. Norris and Max Verstappen share a close off-track friendship, which adds to the speculation of them pairing up at Red Bull in the future. The seat next to Max Verstappen, who consistently outperforms everyone, is considered one of the most challenging positions to fill in F1. It can be mentally draining to compete against a teammate you can hardly ever beat. The added pressure of negative media attention makes it even tougher. Sergio Perez may not contribute as much in terms of data and strategy when Verstappen is leading the World Constructors' Championship by a significant margin, but Perez still manages to achieve decent results for the team. It's important to consider the context, as other drivers have also made mistakes in qualifying and had poor races on Sundays. Perez's performance might appear worse when compared to Verstappen, but it's not necessarily a poor job given the circumstances. It might not make sense if Red Bull lets go of Sergio Perez. He is the ideal second driver. He's skilled enough to compete with or sometimes beat the top drivers from other teams, which relieves some pressure on Max Verstappen. However, he's not so good that he poses a threat to Red Bull's own #1 driver. Perez also played a crucial role in helping Verstappen win his first championship. Replacing Perez could potentially lead to conflicts between the team's drivers or situations where they have to favor one over the other. Red Bull brought Perez in to be the second driver, and it's unreasonable for him to be upset about performing in that role, so it doesn't make sense for Red Bull to make changes and risk disrupting the current balance. Have you ever noticed that Helmut, Marko and Cristian Horner are usually in Max Verstappen's garage during race weekends and not in Sergio Perez's? Some F1 fans believe that Red Bull might be favouring Max over Perez. There have been instances like in Baku this year, where Perez outperformed Max and it seemed to surprise the Red Bull team. Perez even mentioned that Red Bull made changes to his car setup during practice before the Italian GP, making it difficult for him in qualifying. Before that, he was setting similar lap times to Max. It's unclear what Red Bull expects from Perez. On the other hand, Perez needs to fully embrace his role as the second driver at Red Bull, which means consistently finishing in second place. Despite some challenges during the middle of the season, he's still one of the best second drivers in F1. There's also some disagreement between Marko and Horner, which doesn't help the situation. Some Red Bull fans, like myself, wouldn't want to replace Perez with any other driver, even though he's in the number 2 position behind Max. It's unlikely that many top drivers would accept a clear second driver role behind Max Verstappen. But in reality, we don't have to worry about Checo. He's doing really well. He is one of the top drivers in the most challenging racing league globally and is getting paid very well for his job. He's also a big sports star in Mexico, similar to Andy Murray in tennis. Although not the absolute best, he's still among the top competitors. I'm pretty sure that he doesn't consider himself a failure in any way. On another note, I can see Lando joining that team in 2025, and maybe even Charles too. Liam Lawson had a great start in his first F1 weekend, and Red Bull's Helmut Marko is really impressed. It looks like he has a bright future with AlphaTauri in Formula 1. Initially, AlphaTauri didn't plan to have Lawson in Formula 1 for 2023. They chose Nick De Vries to race alongside Yuki Tsunoda. Then when Daniel Ricciardo replaced De Vries, Marko didn't want to move Lawson from his commitment to the Super Formula Championship. But things changed when Ricciardo got a wrist injury and they had to make some changes. Liam Lawson showed his ability to adapt quickly, not just in his impressive performance in Zandvoort, but also in the recent Monza race. Being able to pick up speed quickly is a rare skill, and he's shown it throughout his racing career. It's clear when he confidently overtook Haas drivers during the last race. Marko, in a recent talk about Lawson's future in Formula 1, shared his optimism. He said that Lawson's performance in Italy proved he's really fast, which is a good sign. He also mentioned that Lawson is currently racing in Japan and doing well, even though it's not as well as Formula 2. Marko hinted that if Lawson continues to do well, he might get a full-time racing seat instead of just being a reserve driver. Despite some recent criticism, the Red Bull Academy is known for developing young, talented drivers. Sometimes they make quick decisions that get questioned, but if Lawson keeps going like this, it won't be surprising if he gets a full-time spot with AlphaTauri in the next season, or maybe even the Checo spot.